This panel discussion is really kind of about looking at how we can inspire more academics to pursue and discover conversations in the Web3 space. So I'd love to welcome our panelists on stage, and maybe you can kick off with giving just a brief introduction about your backgrounds and maybe what you're working on at the moment.
Okay. Hi, I'm Bolton. So I graduated with my PhD from the University of Illinois last year. Basically, I've been doing research on formal methods and ZK cryptography for a few years now. And after graduating, I now work at Pi2, which is a company that basically uses formal language semantics for blockchain applications.
Hello, everyone. If you hear me with issues with my voice, I guess the Denver weather has been affecting me. So my name is Walter. I am a PhD candidate in financial computing at University College London. So I'm used to more wet weather rather than a dry weather. And my area combines computer science and finance. So, and I'm also a research fellow at the DLT Science Foundation, which is now Exponential Science.
Everyone, I'm Ranveer. I just gave the talk. Apart from that, I also have some background in consensus algorithms and distributed systems. Happy to join the panel.
Lovely. Welcome to Walt. So just here, just to give you an idea, so we have someone who's a current PhD student, Walter, somebody who's recently graduated, Bolton, and then you're being, I think, very modest about your academic sort of backgrounds, Dr. Ranveer, someone who's got a bit more of a clean background in academia. So just the first bit of question, what made you decide to do a PhD first and foremost?
I guess I can start. So yeah, I think I was always very interested in computer science broadly, and that's a lot of what I studied during my undergraduate years. And I sort of saw a PhD as a way of getting, a big breadth of learnings into sort of different fields of computer science and really sort of going deep on theoretical and technical questions. I don't know if that really sort of panned out because, one sort of thing about a PhD is that it's often, very, very focused on very, core, or it really goes sort of pointy, as people sometimes like to describe it. So that's, one way in which you can really learn a lot, but it's often about a very specific topic. So it's sort of an interesting trade-off that way, I think.
At least in my case, I would say I'm coming from industry, so I was working for a couple of years. So I was not following the traditional path where you start with undergrad and then you go to a PhD or you do a master's. I rather graduated from undergrad and I worked for a while, and then I discovered after working on the smart contract, I would love to actually go into this topic, research it further, and see things that can be done with it. So when I started my PhD, in my case at least, my research is very industry practical focus. So whatever I'm researching has to have some sort of a commercial application in a way. Some of it does not necessarily will lead to commercial purposes, but this is just telling you, my profile would not be normal, the profile that you find from other PhD students. So my incentives are slightly different. My incentives were mainly for learning and see what things can come up after that.
In my case, it was pretty interesting. As in, like I like distributed algorithms. I initially joined a master's program because I wasn't sure if I would continue this, and I got very intrigued into how consensus algorithms and distributed systems work. But broadly, I believe that if you want to build something which is 0 to 1, you require a very fundamental understanding of how systems and protocols work, and that fundamental understanding comes from working in an area, researching in an area for a long time. And I think academia and PhD is a great way to build that acumen.
Thank you very much for those insights. Now, in the crypto space especially, some of the most leading and well-established protocols have been academic founders. And I think it goes a long way as evidence 5 years in, which have been the most sustainable protocols, have been some of those deeply scientific protocols that are existing in the space at the moment. I'd love to get your insights on where do you see the where do you see in your own experiences the desire to stay in a long-term academic field versus commercialization, building and getting products to market? It's a very broad question, so take it which way you may like. So I'll leave that, and maybe we can start from right to left this time.
So, to reiterate, what you're saying is like, how do you balance the academia and like practical applications, right? And I think my approach has been to kind of, in PhD, it's mostly, okay, here's a problem to solve, we'll try to solve it, right? But the great thing about blockchain industry is that it's very accommodating to grand ideas and not just iterative ideas. So you can kind of combine the time horizon needed to actually build something from ground up, doing actual research, with something that has practical applications. Right, so we build like we've been working on Witness Chain for around 3.5 years, and and it's been like, I would say working in industry is kind of very similar to working in academia, because the ecosystem, the investors, everybody are very research focused, and I think it's an ideal intersection of practical and research activity.
What I like about the field is that it's very applications oriented, in the sense that even though, for example, in my case, I might be researching automated market makers, which I will present later, you then can see how this, you can simulate it and you can put it into practice and see the effects of your own research. So it will not remain purely as other fields where are very theoretical. Here you can take that theory and actually put it into practice, either by you going and develop your own code, or even go and develop your own startup. So I've seen some of my colleagues that go and do that. Even some of my professors, they have their own startups on the side with some of the research that they have done. So at least for this field, I love, since it's computer science, it's very applicable what you do. And even though you might be in social sciences, for example, when you bring all some of that social science research into blockchain, you have all this big community, for example, using it, and then you can see the direct results of your theories.
Yeah, so I definitely think I'll echo, I guess, the concept that you all are putting forward. I think, blockchain and computer science in general is maybe like a great place for academics to come and apply ideas in the real world, because, basically, with Web3, maybe we have this sort of new form of computer, or new form of computer applications, and people can sort of bring their computer applications and their economic applications to Web3, and it's just sort of like the sort of universality maybe of the sort of the blockchain as a computing system is sort of amenable to that, and so I think it's a great opportunity for that reason. And I think when it comes to different professors and academics, there are some who I think like to stay in academia, but there are happily others who, like I guess the CEO of my company Pi Squared is, he's been the CEO of multiple companies that work in the Web3 space, and so there are definitely professors who are interested in that kind of thing.
Brilliant, thank you. I think it's such a fantastic time to be a PhD student, where you can get your ideas to market and iterate very, very rapidly. And as I sort of mentioned in the introduction slides, we've highly commercialized the space. So there's enough capital to back some of these big ideas. So if there are any students out there, researchers, do consider having a go at and approaching and building something for industry. Just on that, now, many of you are sort of working in the commercialization phase or on an application. What have been some of the challenges in going to market, whether that is finding investors or that is finding your initial first customers, or it's sort of engaging with the traditional markets. Can you highlight maybe some of the challenges that you faced? But what I'm more keen is like if you've crossed that line, those challenges, what are your main sort of insights and learning points that you've had, which may benefit some of the audience?
So I think on one of the points, I think raising capital in this area is like pretty fairly easy for an academic, so which is great to build long-term products. But one challenge I've seen, and I really like the talk which was hitting on the impossibility results, is that the industry has made certain assumptions on like what can and cannot be done on blockchains, right? And the only way out of it is to lead by example. So for example, I meet a lot of people like, oh yeah, blockchains are for tokens, and that's it. And I mean, it's that kind of mindset, I think, hurts the adoption of new products that can have real product market fit. But I think the industry is slowly moving towards like new type of use cases, PMFs, that blockchains can have. And I think that can, in general, increase the interest of academia within this field as well. Because it's just working on one. So, for example, why is verifiability important, right? And to understand why it's important, you need to look at new type of applications that can be built utilizing this market structure, this consensus structure. And if you see a few examples of that building out, and we see them being built out recently, we see the industry shifting towards more wider suite of applications, leading to more importance of verifiability and consensus, leading to more academics joining in this area.
In my case, I would say initially was finding venues that can welcome your research related to blockchain or the field, specifically because it kind of have some negative connotation at certain points, but it's slowly getting more accepted and respected when you publish research, at least for all the academics, when you do blockchain, especially if you want to go into DeFi and you want to engage with more finance-related academics. They still may have some old views about blockchain, but it's slowly changing. And the same when you try to engage with more economists, etc. And the other thing, it would be your IP. So if you have this desire to build a startup with the research that you're doing, you have this difficulty of deciding if you publish this, it's open to it's for everyone now to use, but what if you want to commercialize it? So it's walking that thin line between both of them. And then at the same time, another issue would be that if you are under a university doing research, your IP, there might be some complication because the university also might own it, and then if you want to commercialize it yourself, so it becomes a full legal problem. And I'm emphasizing this because I've seen it a lot with some of my colleagues. Thankfully, I'm not being in that, but with those issues, but mainly those, in practical terms, you will find those issues.
Yeah, so I can maybe speak to the sort of technical side of going from academia to industry. I think one challenge is that academia sort of takes a different view to technical problems, where it's much less about the implementation details and it's much more about the sort of theoretical properties or the asymptotic performance, things like this. Things that are important and inform implementation, but when it comes to implementation, there are actually a lot of more details that are important and that you need to get right. And so that, I think, becomes more of what you focus on when you move to industry, is focusing on those implementation details and really understanding at a low level how things work. I mean, I guess this is especially true in the ZK snark space, which is where I primarily work. So I think that's maybe an important shift, and maybe also there's something of a mindset shift from sort of flitting from problem to problem, putting your focus on the problems that are interesting puzzles versus putting your focus on the problems which are the actual practical barriers that you need to resolve to move something forward. I think that's, I think when you're an academic, you're attracted to the problems that are sort of aesthetically pleasing, and that can be something of a contrast where there's a more of a motive towards getting something practical to work or getting a technology to be practical. So I think those are some key differences.
Fantastic, love you. And my final sort of follow-up question to that is, in the crypto industry, we have what I call perpetual ADHD, right? There's a new idea coming up, investors are just chasing whatever that new idea is, and I don't think it's very healthy. It's a toxic sort of environment for crypto, and maybe that's why it's not maturing. Now, I think that's where academics and PhDs can hone in their skill sets and have a very mature, analytical overview on how to approach solutions and choose technology stacks and whatnot. So I'd love to know if some insights from your side is, what was your kind of thinking process in choosing some of the technologies that you've integrated into or decided to build applications onto? What was some of your thinking behind that? It may be useful to highlight your decision-making process there. Thank you.
So I think in going into the origin story behind Witness Chain, right? We had been working previously. I was involved in a startup called Trifecta, which was kind of solving the scalability problem. We had a protocol that achieved in 2019 a throughput of 350K transactions per second. And what we realized is that, okay, what's this getting used for, right? why do we need this much throughput? Right? And I mean, even if you look at Wall Street, they trade derivatives, but the derivatives actually correspond to real-world economy, right? And that connection was missing. And I think that became our driver, that in order for any of this to work, you need the real-world GDP to be brought on-chain. And that became our driver since the start of the company.
For me, is how interesting I might find the topic. So, at least in my case, my professor are mostly, they have a banking economics background, but they also are very interested in DeFi, in blockchain, in the field. So that interdisciplinary approach that they have means that there are some ideas that already exist in the economic field and finance that then you can bring some of them and then apply it into blockchain, into DeFi, and see what you can do, what can be done. So when you combine all these things, you take it from other fields where they might take all those things for granted, and you're trying to see how that would look like in a decentralized system, that becomes quite interesting, or at least that's, in my case, how I end up going for the topics of research that I do.
Yeah, so I think, maybe a big factor in like, when you're looking into what things to use, or I think it's, it turns out to be important to go for the sort of, big name things that people sort of are familiar with and expect, just from a level of being able to sort of communicate what you're doing to others. For example, we were working on our technology, and we experimented with several different zkVMs to try and realize our technology, just because we wanted to understand the sort of differences between them, and also I think we wanted to be able to sort of communicate how these things were plugging into the things that we were doing. So I think there's a component of trying to understand where the zeitgeist is at, and I think also maybe another component is sort of like the user experience. I can't stress enough how good it is to have something that's sort of easy to install and has a well-documented interface. That's something that makes it a lot easier for people to use a product. And so I think when you're building things, that's an important thing to consider.
Fantastic, lovely. That's the wrap up of the session. Thank you again, and we'll take a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll go into the next sessions of the afternoon. Thank you.